All right, if everybody could put their mute button on except for Elizabeth, that would be great. Welcome to the October 2024 ACLS talk by Elizabeth Devereaux. The title of her talk is Inspiration and Influences in Her 50-plus year journey as an architectural glass artist in sacred spaces. Since the founding of her studio in 1969, Elizabeth Devereaux has brought her Christian faith and artistic skill together in the medium of architectural art glass. Her windows are installed in churches and public buildings across the United States and Canada. Her design signatures are collaboration, story, the qualities of light, reflection, pattern, layering, and her work is always site specific. So welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Nice to see everybody. And I'll just start right away. I know some people have time constraints. So, I started out with, I'm going to have to move this over a little bit to see it all. You can see what I wrote. I was born in Kentucky, moved to Long Beach at the age of 3. And just a little bit of background. Grew up the youngest of 5 children, and my father was a businessman, and my mother a window designer, but for a department store. And the Catholic values, the spiritual values of the Catholic Church, and a good education were stressed, as well as art and music. And that is me with my brother Dan at my first Holy Communion. There were 5 of us. He was the next in line. And let me see. So this is my dad, early computers. That's that. He was a businessman, and I think I got a lot of osmosis at the dinner table when he talked about business. It was kind of. So after graduating from Dominican University in San Rafael, I had gone my junior year to to Vienna, Austria, and then to the Art Academy in Munich, Germany after I graduated. Then I went to Long Beach State, studying industrial design for a year and a half, and married and started a family, working for Joos Maas, who was a Belgian stained glass designer, lived in Laguna Beach. I then moved to Marin County in Northern California. And eventually I decided on this talk to talk about introducing all of the people that I met in ACLS, Form Reform, IFRA, all of you. And they became a community, really, a group of friends who met periodically around the country. And it was just a wonderful experience. And there were so many different people. I find that Ken Griesmer shows up in most of my shots here, which is kind of funny because he was around and he was a good friend. And Bill Beard was one of my first connections here, who's pictured there. And I said, a bit too much imbibing, because I look a little wistful there. And we're always sitting with a glass of wine, so you never know. There's others with a lot with Dick Bosco. There's Bill Beard on the bottom. There's Marquita Mock, Craig Rafferty, Christine Reinhardt. I did a lot of work with her. Marty Rodeman was always there. You'll probably see people that you know. Kathy Barnard and I worked together on a job with Bill Beard. There's Michael Crosby again. And we're just, lots of different people that you probably know. I was also later on asked to be on the board for Envision Church with Larry Madden at Georgetown, and then the IFRA board, which some of these pictures are taken from, and we gave talks around the country. So you then getting to the glass. One of my early glass producers was Jim Flanagan of Fremont Antique Glass in Seattle, Washington. And he and I have worked together for about 45 years. He's just a wonderful, one of a kind, actually blows these beautiful glass to order. And here he is blowing glass, you know, and you can see the process there. I also use Lambert's glass in Walshaus in Germany. It's the oldest glass-making studio in the world. And when I did Christ Cathedral a few years ago, I went over there, and I've had them do this before. They actually made the glass to order, as does Jim at Jim Flanagan at Fremont. So that's a really wonderful thing that we have, and we didn't always have that you could, like, I could do a watercolor to start. And you know, a lot of people, when they do glass, each piece is a different color. And the thing I think that is maybe different about what I do is I do a sort of a flowing watercolor, and then try to have the glass blown and either painted or etched to match the watercolor. So this is some of Lambert's glass. You'll see a little later Fremont glass. Early on, and when I moved to Chico, I had already been doing it in Marin, but I had a smaller studio, and we did a lot of playful things. There were dogs around, and you can see, you know, that was a large piece that I did actually for our municipal building. And in this slide presentation here, I've only included liturgical work, not the public artwork that I've done as well. Except for early on, I'm showing. So I have a wonderful team of people who, and Owen Gabbert is project manager, and we've worked together for 35 years. He's beveling here. I'm at the kiln doing firing. We had this last project we did was turned out to be 260-pound panels, and we did not have the capacity to do that easily. So Owen made a hoist, a jib, a special tilting table. He's just kind of able to do anything. And Marie Swanson is up in the upper right. And my nephew, Abraham Devereaux, worked for us in the last couple of years. And then my son, Chris Talent, has worked for us too. We've had a lot of people over the years, but these are more recent. So Owen himself is an artist and a metal sculptor, and he can do anything with glass and solve any problems. So I'm so lucky to have him with me. Early work, you can see, I'll go back to that. That was very early. You know, so I was in a book called New Glass in 1976, and this is one of the images. And then I got some commissions in San Francisco. This was through architects, and this one actually is for Neil Schoen, who is of the music group Journey. He lived in Marin, and I did 16 windows of Marin County wildlife for him. And then my brother is a designer builder for homes, and he built this house, and it was very modern. My other brothers actually financed it and asked him to do it, and I did windows for him that were site specific and really followed the design. And then he made that little gate in the front that matched the design of the windows. So we were kind of having a conversation. So reflective materials have always intrigued me, because when stained glass usually goes dead at night, but reflective materials give it a different life at night. And it's so I started exploring with that, just, you know, sort of relationships like conflict, intimidation, compassion. And that's with mirror and clear and hand blown glass. You can see that's a really different thing. You know, you can see my son when he was very little is reflected in the one on the right. Also, you can see the lighting is different in this, and I did some commissions with that. In 1985, I was in the AIA convention at San Francisco where they did the cutting edge of design. And this was an experimental piece with etched glass and polished stainless steel, just again exploring, half of that is actually a mirror. The left half is just reflecting the right. So it's kind of, then this was for my brother for another building that he did, and a residence, showing different lights as well. They changed so much. It's always been intriguing for me. And then I got some interesting commissions in Marin and around the Bay Area of California. This one was, they had an Inca sort of collection. So in our conversation, I decided to do something that resembled an Inca sort of temple design, and it was hammered brass and then glass as well. The new glass book came out in 1976, and it was a lot of people from the West Coast, and it was another community of people that I really enjoyed. But then I got into liturgical work, and I had wanted to do that for quite a while. I worked for 15 years in residential and some of the, a little bit of commercial work, then became more, interested because I was involved with this Vatican II community in Marin. I really wanted to integrate the church work with my own spiritual path. So this was the first one I did, which was Point Reyes Presbyterian Church near where I lived in Marin County. They had a Celtic cross, and so I looked at the Book of Kells and sort of worked around that Celtic cross. It was right on the ocean as well, and so I did the fish and the nets, and it also, diffused the glaring light that was coming into the room. And the cross hatching is actually gold, so it is reflective at night. I did a large commission down in Southern California in Rowland Heights, and that is just part of it. There were a number of windows, but these were opposite sides of the room, painting and firing, as I started to do more and more. This was in another room in the same commission that I call this Hosanna. And it was, again, that beautiful Fremont antique glass that was etched. It had 3 micro layers of color and opacity on it. And I etched away to the bottom to get that white sort of just almost fog-like diaphanous look to it. Then I was published in some of the magazines, and a priest from St. Raphael Catholic Church in Raleigh, North Carolina, called me up out of the blue and said, "I think we'd like a window from you." And it was this one. It was the Beat of Wings, St. Raphael Catholic Church. And it was a wonderful experience working with this person and this priest. And he and I sat in a chair after it was installed, and he just was quiet for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then he started reciting a poem about angels. And I went to the bookstore a little later on, and there was that poem, and I brought the book back to him. It's just certain things are a little serendipitous, and this was really that kind of experience. I did a number of windows for Our Lady of La Salette in Attleboro. I think at that point it was a downturn in the economy, and they decided not to do any more at the time. So this is one of the ones that I completed for them. And then through Bill Beard, I was introduced to this commission, University of Missouri Newman Center. It's 1,000 square feet of glass. It goes all the way around the room. And when I actually went to mass with this Newman group, they've had a really beautiful sort of a music ministry, and I was also involved in that in my community. And they also were very searching, and so I did this Put In for the Deep, which was symbolic of their search for their spiritual journey. And in the Eucharistic Reservation Chapel, I did this Gather Us into the Spirit, which was a song that they sang. And I had this triple layer flash gold pink glass made from Fremont. And, I had to actually cut every piece myself because it was unclear to start exactly how to do this. And I had been to a retreat in Chicago with Gil Ostick and the group, and I was really concerned. I remember praying about this one and saying, okay, can I do it? And I went back, and it was like a meditation. It was really quite a wonderful experience. And it's 10 by 12 feet. It's probably bigger than it looks here. Then I got this commission at St. Bartholomew Catholic Church in Columbus, Indiana, which is, some of you probably know, it's pretty famous architectural town, small as it is. And I did a number of windows, including the big one. And then this smaller one, which is a door that rolls back. And I did sort of a mimic of the first window, but looking out to the outside, using just clear and hand-blown pieces of glass and some white. Then with Christine Reinhard, I did Holy Spirit Catholic Church in Saginaw, Michigan. And this is one side, and the other side is very similar. And since it was Holy Spirit, I know we went through a process of listening to what had meaning for them. But I went back to the scriptural, where the Jesus had died, and the apostles were in the upper room, and suddenly a gust of wind came blowing in, and then tongues of fire were over their heads. And so that became the focus, and of course you're dealing with, first of all, there was glare on that one side. Well, both sides, east and west, depending upon the time of day. But the back was not glaring, but up towards the front, it was much more glaring towards the altar. So I used much deeper colored glass in the front and then opened it up in the back. And this is on the other side, just part of it. When the sun shines through this, I used a transparent glass, this orange to yellow, because then it bleeds, it halos out when the sun shines through it, whereas the rest of the glass is all diffused and sort of semi-opaque, was opal. This is actually interesting. Through Bill Beard, I was competing with Ken Von Rohn on and off, and he said, well, I want you to do one together. And it was Pax Christi in Littleton, Colorado, and Bill was experimenting with straw bale construction at that time. So this chapel for Pax Christi was straw bale, and the people helped build it, which is pretty interesting. And then Ken and I actually spent a couple of days working together, back and forth on site to draw this design. And then I actually I did, some of it, but he did, I went back to Kentucky to work with him to fabricate the window as well. And then in Cleveland, Ohio, through Dick Fosco, he was the consultant there, I got this large commission at St. Ignatius High School Chapel, and it was funded by a former student, Murphy's Oil Soap owner, and he put up the money for that and a number of other buildings there. So this was Jesus meeting his mother after the resurrection. And on the opposite side, in the Eucharistic Reservation Chapel, there was this this altar that had been carved by a Jesuit 100 years before. And that was to be the focus of the room, but it was also meant to be invitational and warm. And so I did this, just background of red, and it's on red and amber, and it was on 3 sides. So as you can see on the lower photograph, the sun shines through it, and a lot of the effect of the window is on the reflections that it projects onto the floor and the walls. In another room in that, that was a 2-year project, and there was an image of Saint Anne looking down on Mary, the child, and I just thought I'd put. Sometimes, I'll be asked to do some figurative work, and so that was one area where I did it. Ken Griesmer was a liturgical consultant here. This was in O'Fallon, Illinois, St. Clair Catholic Church. And that was just a delightful project. This is Brother Sun and Sister Moon. It was on the opposite side. So they were 9-foot, round windows. And, there was a lot of wonderful interaction in the committee for this. And the priest and I are still, he came to visit at one point, my husband and me in California, and we still write each other. It's, on and off. It's just, he was a wonderful connection too. This one is also, this is in Newport Beach, and Robert Habiger was the liturgical consultant here. Did a lot of studies for this. I think you can see there's on the one on the left, that's for St. Catherine Drexel outside of Chicago, but the other 3 are studies I did for this window and ended up with the lower right design. And that also has gold in it and shows at night. And then I was asked to do work with Lori Gross. If any of you know her, she's a wonderful designer. She does a lot of synagogues, and so this was a Jewish mausoleum in Culver City near Los Angeles, and they wanted something a little more representational than I often do. And I had been on a raft trip. I was telling Pam this yesterday. It's kind of interesting. And this was one of the things that I was left with on that raft trip, because we spent 3 days and nights. But they were representing prophecy, different prophecies in scripture in the Old Testament. And so each one, though, is representing the earth in different ways. And on the outside, there was a laser etched sort of a rope design that was symbolic. And so it was kind of interesting to work with something so different. Laminating, I started to do some lamination. I was asked to do a cottage hospital meditation room. And we started to use this German optical silicone. Owen and I were working on that, and produce these earth, air, fire, and water. Each one was different. It was in a light box in this meditation chapel, kind of something new for us. And then I was asked to do St. Maximilian Kolbe Catholic Church in Westlake Village, and you can see there's a number of different areas in the sanctuary and in the gathering space. The architects had actually done this, and you can see that in those designs that are on the wall hangings. The architects actually did sort of a chevron design with some green and some amber. And so I was trying to follow in their footsteps and integrate with the art glass both the color and the chevron design. They also had gold in the, gold leaf in the gathering space, so I used gold also on some of that. You can see some reflections. Noe Valley, I think we were talking about that earlier. This is Noe Valley Ministry, John Goldman architect, who was a friend. And in this place, they had a wonderful crucifix from Ruth Azawa, who's a pretty famous artist and did a lot of branchy things. And then there was the in-ground meditation. I'm forgetting the word for their for a meditation space. And I integrated those two things into the window, calling it Coming to the Center. That proved to be a very interesting commission because they have wonderful concerts every month. And this one composer from San Francisco is fairly well known, Jake Hagee, came in and he said, I want to do a meditation on that window. And so they had a big concert at one point, and he did this, sorry, go back. He did this meditation, and Frederica von Stade sang it. I don't know if you know who she is, but she's a pretty well-known opera singer. And it was such an honor. It was really a wonderful collaboration in a way. This is in Oceanside. It's St. Thomas More Catholic Church, and very much more abstract approach, and using optical silicone in lamination. This is in the reconciliation space, and purple represents, penance. And also there was a need to have it pretty occluded, but you can see from the upper, when the sun shines through it, you really can't see through anything, but there's projection of light on the floor. On the lower one, you can, with not a direct light, you can just barely see the landscape on the outside. Now, I think I mentioned that I had a real interest in reflection and in glass. So when I went to Europe for a couple of years, I also went to Saint-Chapelle, and I'm sure some of you have been there, and it's just phenomenal. But also, they have these gold patterns and on the walls, and I was really intrigued by that. And pattern has always intrigued me. I'll go back to that. Because what I wanted to do was to do that in my own work. And in industrial design, we did logos, and that is distilling sort of the identity or the meaning of a place, or what has meaning for a person or for a group. It's also an icon. And so I started working with that. And this is actually the second church commission I got. It was a competition. And St. Joseph Cathedral in San Jose. And that is the same window, the detail you're seeing on the right. That is the same window by day and by night. And I used the gold in this case because the church had a floor plan of a Greek cross. So that exterior sort of a lattice work that you see around the center is actually a Greek cross repeated. And in the center are the sacred geometry symbols of earth, the earth, air, fire, and water, and that is the square. And then there's the triangle, which is mind, matter, and spirit, and they meet in the center, which is God or eternity. So that's what happens at night. You begin to see the geometry of the church, and in the day, it was the Eucharist, baptism, and the center was always the resurrection. And same with Christine Reinhardt's Holy Childhood Catholic Church in Harbor Springs, Michigan. You can see this gold pattern that was in the window, and you can see it by day and night. It created a circle in the upper left. You can see that. and then a day and night on the lower right, and then you can see the detail, which is this church is on Lake Michigan. So it was sort of centered the earth, with the sky and the waters as the symbol. And Dominican University, my alma mater, asked me to do a window for their chapel, and it's called the Light of the Spirit, because it was supposed to be also not so Catholic that they couldn't do interdenominational events there as well. But it was facing Mount Tamalpais, which is a big feature in Marin County, and that was the icon there in gold. And I go back to show you that on the lower right. That's how we did the pattern, is we'd have it made by computer in sheets, and then press it onto the glass, spray it with gold luster, fire it in the kiln. It's labor intensive, but the effects are usually, it brings so much more detail to the design. Again, site specific, this was behind a piece of glass. It was grid. It had a grid in it. So I just followed the grid more or less. And this was for St. Elizabeth Ann Seton in Irvine, California. And this was in Lake Orion, Michigan. It's earth, air, water, and fire. And it had, as you can see, when direct light is on it, the reflection on the projection of light on the floor, which was pretty strong in certain cases. And also this little pattern in each of those windows was the double cross that they had in the trusses of the roof. So, picking up different things that had importance, either in the architecture or in meaning or place. And then using gold, again with Christine Reinhardt, St. Mary Magdalene. And this was in Brighton, Michigan. There were 4 angels, and you can see the scale of it with little Christine on the lower side, and then the priest going through with his doggy on the upper side. All painted and fired on both sides, so that it was visible from inside and outside, and it was an interior commission. Here it is in the process of being fabricated by Aaron McCumber, one of my earlier fabricators. And then I was painting it here before we fired it in the kiln. I usually do wear a mask. I want to tell you that. So I go to the desert every year. This will be my 48th year. Go for about a week, sort of a Lenten retreat. And I'm very inspired by it. So you can see how the work is, has its inspiration a lot in nature. So this was one for St. Maximilian Kolbe in their reconciliation room. That's in Frankenmuth, Michigan. That's Snowy Valley, the upper part with Hubble photograph in the upper left. That's one I did with Roberto Chiodi in Ontario, Canada. It's a very large, sort of a long design, and I just selected this to show how it's, reflecting nature. This is a mausoleum I did in Orange County. And again, the laminated panels in Santa Barbara, and Gather Us into the Spirit. You can sort of see the glass is mirroring the sky. And again, in Dominican at the Light of the Spirit. And this is a Japanese American Methodist church in West Los Angeles. Again, using pattern and their story, which was that they were gardeners and growers. And then Saginaw, Michigan, Holy Spirit. And this was Palmdale, St. Mary's Catholic Church in Palmdale, just to show how, the earth is really sort of kind of comes up in the designs. This is the most recent one I completed, and it's in San Luis Obispo and Dignity Hospital. And there I am camping in the desert, and this one is actually it's a large one that I did. It's called Holy Family Catholic Church, and that's with a lot of German hand-blown glass. You can see the scale, and also on the left lower, the projection of bevels and textures onto the space. Mark Joseph Costello was the consultant in this one. So my last three projects, I think you mentioned the New Clairvaux Abbey in Vina, California. It's actually a 12th century monastery. It was a very interesting story because I actually have known them since I moved to Chico 35 years ago and had a retreat with them. But I watched them. William Randolph Hearst bought a defunct monastery, a 12th century monastery, took all the rocks piece by piece, brought them to California, and then the Depression and World War II hit, and he couldn't do anything with it. So it was left behind. The museum in San Francisco for 40 years, and these Cistercian monks found out about it, and they really wanted to get them. They felt it would be a real continuity, and so eventually they did, and about 50% had already been destroyed or taken, and so they had a fund raising. I think it went on for 15 years, and they finally got it built and asked me to do the designs for it. And we had a long conversation. It was really wonderful. It is really such an honor to do something in a building like this. So, Saint Bernard of Clairvaux was the beginner of the order of Cistercians, and light was really important. So, and as a way of determining, their spiritual life, which wove through from this unconscious or earth bound to the spirit on the top, and as it got higher, it became more and more transparent, which is sort of what the spiritual journey is. It's representing that. And also, I found out that New Clairvaux means Valley of Light, and that became the design for the icon. And in their prayer room, I put 5 of these windows, which had the same pattern in the background. And another one that is really one of the last 3 that I've done. This is another 3-year project. This is Christ Cathedral, which was Crystal Cathedral, and it had Philip Johnson, Richard Neutra, and Richard Meyer architects, well-known architects in the 20th century. So it was quite what they were looking for, since this is, this silver presence was across the green. They have a 34-acre campus there, and was this Memorial Gardens mausoleum, and they wanted something that could speak back to the cathedral. So and they wanted the resurrected Christ and angels, and this was the design I did in gold luster. I had an architect do a rendering, sort of a visual simulation of what it would look like. And this is a design, it's a close-up design. I went over to Europe because I knew I couldn't do all of those. We were going to focus on the Christ and the angels, and then the clerestory windows, but there's 12 windows on the side of either side of the resurrected Christ. And I went to Germany, to Derek's studio in Tannhausen, and worked with Karl-Heinz Traut and Olaf Hanweg, who are real experts in their field. And they made these panels with bevels in between them. We also had a very long design process, and what would this Christ face look like? And started out with the left picture, pixelated it into the middle, and then there was a most amazing thing that happened. I put that design in the middle on transparency and printed it, and it came out looking like the design on the right. And I brought it and we tried to use it, but we were going to use it with gold on the outside, and it looked more like Chewbacca on the outside than it did the Christ figure. And we decided, because this was 95% Vietnamese, we should really go with a very muted suggestion of a Christ face. Starting out with the angels, that was the design. Then in the studio, the middle, and then it was in place on the right. This is in process with my son Chris and Owen. And then in the installation, you can see where they all fit. And I also had to have this blown at Lambert's in Germany, because we had 44 clerestory windows with these bevels, which represented the spire of the church. I'm going to go back, because that right window shows all of those amber pieces with the bevels, which represented the bell tower across from it, which you can see through one of those windows. So going around the room in the blue, all the way around the backside, there were these bevels with the blue as well. And this is a close-up of what it looks like. And at night, it looks like that. So it changes a lot. You could see it in 3 different lights. And then the last one that I've completed, and it was a 3-year project, is Dignity French Hospital in San Luis Obispo. And they found the donors were very generous and liked what I did. And so we worked really well together. And I designed this. This is a visual simulation, and you can see that beautiful Fremont antique glass on the right side, which I had made for that window. In the studio, just trying to, it's big, there's 700 square feet of glass here too. And there's Owen and Abraham and Marie with this hoist and a jib and his tilting table to lift those 260-pound panels. It was quite an event. And Marie, cleaning and refining precisely, and Abraham and Owen, they're all at work for a long time. I say praying at the window. Abraham was, and then you can see the watercolor design and the finished window, which are pretty close. And there's a whole lot of painting and firing, and a lot of it did things we didn't expect and had to be done over and then matched with what was next to it. It was quite a surprise the way it worked, but in the end, it turned out fairly well. And the lower middle panel shows all of the black lines. Those were not lead lines. Those were actually gold irid glass that at night became reflective. So that is my presentation, and I welcome any commentary that anybody has.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. What a wonderful talk. I love seeing the progression of your work from the early to later on and the different things that you developed. And I really appreciate the rock star quality of what you did, having the band and so many talented people behind you. Just just amazing to see. If anyone would like to ask a question or make a comment, please unmute yourself and go ahead. There we go. I know Peggy has something to say.
Thank you. I just think it's astonishing work. And, since no one else saw this, because I showed it, this is the spread in Faith and Form when she won, Elizabeth won the award, the Faith and Form award for that Cistercian monastery. And it was just extraordinary. It was no question that the jury, that was the one when we saw that slide. And I just I was so excited to see you were coming because I wanted to hear you talk about it. We've got a situation right now with we have at Virginia Seminary, we had a chapel that burned, and then they built a new chapel, and some of the windows, we have some Rowan Lecomte windows, that early ones he and his wife did, Irene, and where they were before, they were lit during the day because of where the chapel was sited. Where they are in the new chapel, they're behind a building that casts a shadow on them. And I think they're the most beautiful windows there. And I keep trying to get them to light them somehow from outside so that during the day we can see them. And I just wondered if you have any recommendations for how you handle something like that. It seems like all of yours are lit from outside because they're so big. And these windows are maybe 6 feet by, there are 3 of them. So do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, I just have to say, a shadow, is that a shadow all day long?
Well, for most of the day, it's behind another a house and so there's just not, and some of the window can be seen for some of the lower parts of these 3 windows during some of the day, but you mostly when you walk in that chapel, what you see is the leading.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Because the color is just,
you know what I would say, I mean, that's probably not where you would choose to put a window, because you would consider how it's going to be lit from behind first. But yeah, I'd be glad to talk to you privately. And what I need to do is to see pictures of what it would look like, and if there's a way. I mean, the only thing I could think is, I don't know exactly the lighting situation from the outside, and so if there's any way of capturing light from the outside to reflect back on the window, I mean, otherwise I need to see what the situation is to be able to answer that question, I think.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I didn't mean to have a consultation here, but I just wondered if you'd ever dealt with that. And I'm also really interested to know what stained glass or other artists are you're influenced by, because there's a whole revival, particularly in Europe, of stained glass.
Oh,
seems to
sure.
me.
I mean, Ludwig Schaffrath was one of the big ones. I actually took a trip over there a couple of times and visited some of, the Germans particularly. I mean, after the war, they had this huge opportunity with so many windows broken during the war. And so he was Ludwig Schaffrath was sort of one of the main people. There were many. Renchen was from England. There were quite a few different German artists that were very inspiring to Americans and came over in the early 70s and gave workshops and a lot of people that I know learned from them. But I mean, certainly, John, let's see, what's his name? Clark from what is it? These are people that I haven't seen. There's a number of people in Scotland and England. But what are you talking about, modern or
Yeah, yes, I was just wondering what contemporary, the only person I
well,
was struck
Narcissus
by.
is another person who's well known. He's a
Mhm.
scholar. There's some wonderful glass art. That's John Clark, who's from Scotland but lives in Germany now. And I mean, Ed Carpenter, this new glass book that came out that I was in, there were a lot of wonderful designers. Peter Malika, he's the one that actually said to me at one point, don't push the architectural so much.
Yeah.
You're already in the milieu of the church, and you probably should focus on that. And I took his words to heart. I felt like he was right on. It just was a continuation of what my spiritual journey was already. So
Thank you.
There are a couple of messages that I got from the direct messaging. Gilbert Sangera had to leave to go to his class, but he wanted to thank you for the presentation. And Lisa Beer said, thank you, Elizabeth. So fresh, holy, beautiful. Colors are exquisite, as is the line, full of grace.
thank you. That's nice to hear.
And, no one's mentioned this so far, so I will. I'm really impressed that you camp in the desert by yourself. Are you by yourself doing that? Wow. For a week, that's just impressive.
But let me explain. I'm in a campground. There's only 15 people, 15 sites in a primitive campground. So and I've done this so long, it's sort of familiar, and I feel pretty safe doing that. And I explore it, all over, and each year is different. And it's so soul enriching. It's really an incredible thing. Yeah.
Elizabeth, I'd like to
Yes.
apologize for being late. Got held up at a meeting, but I'm glad I caught you. My neighboring parish, St. Elizabeth Seton, which you did the windows for, as the early 90s with Armando Ruiz.
Yes.
I just had the occasion to be there for a funeral for a deacon. And there were a number of visiting deacons and priests there, and a lot of really positive comments on your work there. And even for myself, I don't get there very often, but I went in and just taken aback by the beauty of that work, that you did, so long ago. So my parish, we built a new building. We've been in for 6 years, and I keep hearing comments from people. Our original church had such beautiful stained glass windows, and there's no color in here. How come we don't have stained glass windows? And I said, well, the architect showed renderings with windows with color, nothing specific, but couldn't happen. So I keep telling them, the money's in your pockets. Make a donation specifically for windows, and someday it'll happen, maybe a little at a time. So I'm hoping that can happen while you might have an opportunity to come and meet with the parish and talk about that. That's when I went to St. Elizabeth Seton last week, I was just like, oh my gosh. I'd love to see this in our church. Anyways, just confidence is beautiful work. It stands the test of time.
Thank you. Appreciate that a lot.
Elizabeth, I wanted to ask, what is the name of the church in Noe Valley in San Francisco?
Noe Valley Ministry.
Do you know where it is?
It's near Elizabeth Street. I can't remember the.
Oh, okay, that's helpful.
Yeah.
I'll find it. Thank you, because it's beautiful and I want to go see it.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Ken.
Yeah, this is wonderful to see this retrospective.
You were in the middle of it.
I know. I noticed you didn't mention Grand Marnier anywhere along the way. Part of the inspiration of your work, I know. Dan just mentioned being on site with one of your projects, and I had a chance with my wife back in July to visit Father Jim over in O'Fallon at St. Clair, and saw those wonderful windows and stood in the Blessed Sacrament Chapel again and just marveled. But one of the things that I think I saw this in one of your photographs, but the baptismal font at the entrance at St. Clair, which is an overflowing kind of font, so the surface of the water is very still. When you walk in and you look at the water, you see that window up above, and it is just so striking. And I kind of remember everyone being sort of surprised by that when that went in. But I'm pretty sure you knew that was going to happen, and as part of your conceptualization of these windows is where the reflections are going to happen and add to the experience.
Yeah.
So
And definitely, and the projections of light as well
Mm.
as reflections. So, but you were instrumental in that as well. So, kudos to you.
Well, I use photographs of that installation to talk about that phenomenon of how the font can be a reflection of the glass around the space, and it's convinced a few people, so it was good. It was a good result there.
Good. Great. Wonderful working with you, Ken.
Likewise.
Well, we are about at the end of our time. I want to thank you so much, Elizabeth. This has just been a lovely day. If I could just go and be in one of your chapels, I think it would be an amazing experience. I know, having gone through health issues with my mom this past year, that stained glass in a hospital like you just did it's such a gift to so many people. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. And in fact, I had personal experiences in my family where we went to a hospital chapel, and it was underwhelming. And I just
Yeah.
thought that I think people don't always understand how important it is to have a sense of comfort and hope and beauty
Right.
when you're going through loss, So,
Yeah, I walked into the chapel at I won't say what hospital, and walked right back out. It just wasn't a place where I felt like I could let go and pray, So
Mm.
yeah, it makes a big difference.
Oh,
Well, thank you so much.
you.
And
Thank you, everybody.
yes.